Alrighty, everybody, welcome in. My name is Joe, and let's see what kind of game we can get in today. Alright, well, we're jumping right in. Looks like I got the white pieces. Let's see what we've got. So I'm starting off with my Queen's Gambit. This is a system that I like to play. My opponent's going for the declined variation. We know what to do in this situation. We're going to keep developing. Either knight can come up. That's pretty standard. Most likely my opponent will develop their knight this way. That just seems to be pretty standard for the Queen's Gambit line. Oh, that's alright. Notice if they take, we just take back with the pawn. Not a problem. I plan on capturing here to go for the... I don't know if it's got an official name, the exchange variation, the early exchange, but I'm going to drive this. So my opponent wants me to capture here. I don't need to because I've got it defended. I'm going to go ahead and grab here. Alright, that's the one that I didn't want to see. That's fine. It's not my favorite, bringing the queen out like that. It does put double pressure here. I've got it defended twice, so I'm okay. This move does threaten the queen now. Notice my knight is no longer pinned, so I can threaten the queen. I was hoping to be able to stick my bishop on a more active square, but in the Queen's Gambit system, we know that the... I'm just doing a quick debate here, but I'm going to grab this way. If my opponent grabs, I can grab with my pawn, and then my pawn stays centralized. Either way, okay, sorry, I'm trying to talk and do math in my head. All right, so I need an additional defender here on this pawn before trades start happening. This really blocks in my dark square bishop, but the dark square bishop is kind of a weaker piece in this system. I'm still defended here. So it is something we have to be careful with, that as we're developing, what do we do with our dark square bishop? We just got to keep an eye on that, try to figure out where it goes. That's very typical of the Queen's Gambit line. This dark square bishop gets blocked in. So one way is to try to get it out early before this happens, before it gets closed down. Another way is to bring it out on this side. Sometimes if this pawn is back here, then a dark square bishop along the A3 diagonal can prevent your opponent from castling and give you a little bit of an advantage. Not a huge one, but give you somewhat of an advantage. So the first step is to notice I cannot attack because I dropped my bishop. So my first step is castle. And now I'm ready to unleash an attack on my opponent's queen. In fact, I'm thinking, what about something like this? You know, I need to move my knight out of the way. So the question is, where does the knight go? Well, the knight goes here, obviously. That comes with an immediate attack. The only reason I did that is because I was able to pick up that pawn in the process. The knight could sit here. This is pretty typical for, not typical, but this is for the way I play. This fianchetto structure of the light square bishop in the Queen's Gambit decline. The official name is, there is an official opening called the Catalan opening. That's an opening that I kind of like to play. All right, so now we're past the opening. So now we're transitioning into the mid game, where decisions have to be made. First decision is, does this knight stay here, or does this knight have to move? Well, my opponent has 2 attackers on it. I have 1 defender. Boy, my arrows are not doing very well today. So I would lose material. In this case, I would drop a whole pawn. So my opponent captures, I capture back, they grab the pawn. So next up would be a simple just grab. Is that an option, just to grab here? Notice he's got 2 defenders. I have 2 attackers, so I can only grab once. I'm not winning anything there. Lastly would be something like this. No, I was thinking maybe I could get my queen. No, my queen can't get up and put an extra defender here. So realistically, there's no way to put an extra defender unless I push F4, and that's something I don't really want to do right now. So I have to move the knight. So 2 attackers, 1 defender. I have to move the knight. Let's just go for an even trade. Trade the knights off. All right, and now the question is, what's next? So a couple of thoughts is, number one, this pawn here. Do I want to? I don't think so. I'd like to leave my pawns here in the center. I could try pushing a pawn. I want to free up my dark square bishop. I could push a pawn. That leaves that undefended though. If I push here, yeah, my opponent also has 2 attackers on this pawn. I could move the bishop, but hear me out. The only reason I'm not moving the bishop to try to reposition it, the only reason I'm not is because my rooks that would disconnect my rooks, and that's something I need to be careful of, bringing the bishop back. All right, let's go for it. This puts a 3rd defender here, so we're defending our central pawn. The only thing defending this particular, okay, I can't grab here. What does this knight do? So we have to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of this move? If my opponent brings the queen over, I can simply push a pawn. Not the world's greatest move, but it's a move. Notice my bishop is undefended, so I do have to keep an eye on that. We're just stopping this. My opponent has already castled, so there's no rook sitting here, so I don't have to worry about this file opening up. So we've got 2 attacks on the board right now. We are threatening and we are threatening. So now let's start looking at what my opponent could do. All right. So most likely looking to move the knight. Yeah. So they move the knight out of the way. Could reposition it any number of places. Just start here. This is a good position. They're probably going to want to develop this bishop somewhere. Yeah, that's rough. Now I have to be careful If this comes, this comes. Let's start here. I think we're going to be okay. I think we have time to grab. This is a threat. Yeah, that's fine. This is going to come right back. And then I should be able to have this now. Right. So now we're up a little material. We've weathered the storm. My opponent's gonna have to move their queen. Looking for this next is my guess. Or this. Ooh, realistically, either of those could work. Because then that puts pressure here. If I bring my queen here, I'm defending both of these. My queen is defended. It's an ugly, ugly spot to put my queen. I'm not in love with it. I have a threat here I could go after. All right, I'm just gonna grab. It's hard for me to think right now. This is an ugly position, and I've got to be real careful. There's no knight forks right now. And this is one of the things that I have a hard time visualizing. And yeah, some people say drawing lines on Lee chess is a bit iffy. I don't know. It's a tool that I have to use because I don't know any other way. All right, at this point in time, I really would like to get the queens off the board. Is this safe? I now have two backwards pawns, which could become targets. I would love to trade queens, and given the opportunity I will, but I have to be really careful that I don't drop a pawn in the process. So now there's two attackers here. I'm losing this pawn with check. I can get a rook under this one, but I'm losing this one with check is what it's boiling down to. We can get our king into the game, but then this comes with check. So it's got to be here. So if I bring the rook over, check, slide over, then where could the knight go? I get forked? No, because check. He has to. Okay, so I'm okay there. So let's try this. I know that I'm not defending this pawn, but I'm going to bring my king over to put a second attacker. So when he brings the knight in, I'll bring my king over as a second attacker. He could go for this pawn, and that's fine too. But I'm expecting one of these two to be the target, and he has two attackers. I only have one defender, so I'm going to lose a pawn. I am still up material, so I'm going to keep banking that. All right, this is a target. I'm looking to push my pawn one more step, but I can also lift this rook here soon. Ooh, interesting remaneuver. That's a good move. That's a good move. I hadn't considered that. Cancel. Actually, I want to go here. He'd have to get to here to fork me. So I'm okay there. These guys are on opposite colors, so there's no knight fork. Get that rook lift in. That's a target. And then I think we're going to walk our king back, our king up. Now I do have, again, there's a knight fork possibility, but it would take my opponent a couple moves to get there. I'm missing something, and I'm not sure what. I feel like I'm missing something here. Ah, this is a target. Hang on, cancel. Have to go this way. That's a target. Dadgummit. I was hoping to double up my rooks, throw in a check here, exchange off one more pair of rooks, but that's not going to happen right away. Good news though is I can push a pawn now. I have to start watching my time here, so I'm going to have to start moving pretty quickly. And so this is a rapid game, right? A 10 plus 5. Meaning it's 10 minutes and then we get a 5-second increment. Ooh, I gotta watch. That's what I just said. What did I just say? I gotta watch for those forks. Time management, my friend. Time management. He's gonna look to go here or here. Well, he's trapped actually. That's the good news. All right, I gotta start walking my pawn here, so I need to get my rook on the other side. So let me slide my rook up. That makes it easier. So now I'm stopping his king from joining this side of the table. Now I can move this pawn. If he moves, I can take. If he takes, I can go, yeah, it's fine. If he takes, I go here. He has to go here. Just do this. I'm not great at endgames, you guys know this, but I've got this check I can throw in. My opponent has equalized in a really, or not equalized, my opponent has played a really strong game. For dropping that piece earlier, or the exchange earlier, now they've forced me to drop an exchange. And I'm up 1 pawn. Yeah, that's something my opponent has to do. I think I can get away with this. Now it's my opponent's turn to move, and the problem is they don't have a lot of moves. I don't have a lot of moves either, is the problem. I could go, oh, that's what I need to do, is I need to go here. Yeah, I need to go here, and then here. With check, let me think this through. I don't know. I'm not smart enough through these endgames, guys. That comes with check at least. And I can get to a protected square on either side if I need to. Oh, this could be really good for me actually. Connected passed pawns, that's really strong. My opponent's only pawn I'm already defending, so this is pretty much game here. If he takes, then I walk a pawn to queenship. He can't chase back in time. That comes with check, and now we just have to do the game where we force our opponent into checkmate, and it takes a little bit. Let's start with this. This is the easiest. And we're, you know what, we've got an extra pawn here. We're gonna do this the easy way. Just don't stalemate. Make sure my opponent is not in stalemate, right? So my opponent can go here. So let's just walk ourselves up. Walk ourselves over. So now we're gonna do this the cheesy way. I'm gonna get a rook. And you're thinking, why are you getting a rook, Joe? Oh, well, my opponent's gonna make this a little easy for me. And as long as you do this with check every time, you don't run into a situation where you stalemate. Good game, well played to my opponent. Very good job. Okay, so let's take a quick analysis of this game. Let's see how it went. I've got the engine off for now because I like to analyze my games without the engine and then go back and put the engine on to examine how was I making the correct thought process, right? So it's not about did I make a good move, yay or nay. It's was my thought process correct? Was I evaluating it correct? So we start off here with a really typical Queen's Gambit declined. We can put the opening explorer on. And you can see knight c3 and knight f3 are the two most common moves by a massive margin. I like to go for the Catalan variation. Yeah, the bishop trade-off might have been a better variation for me. I went with the knight to c3 because that's the most common. If my opponent already had another knight here, notice that knight can come all the way to e4 and put a double attack on that knight with only one defender. So I would have to get another. I would have to get another. I would have to get another defender onto that to make sure I don't run into any weird situations. In the Queen's Gambit, a lot of times the queen comes to c2. The queen from c2 can keep an eye on this e4 square, which means you could put a pawn there eventually as one option. Notice the knight also helps contribute to that. But the queen on c2 also helps defend our knight on c3, so it's another option to look at. All right, let's continue on. Yeah, so now we're into the very few games left. Mamedyarov, yeah. So Mamedyarov is a very famous chess player, one of the top in the world. And he played a line here, and we could follow his game if you want. We could go in and see what his game looked like, but his was a draw, so my guess is if I captured d to c5, we would follow the Mamedyarov game, which we could see. Yep. His game continued. Oh, C captures on D. Whoops, I said that wrong, didn't I? Yeah, so we are following along on that game. Yep. There's a few other games. I don't know a lot of these players. I'm not really up to date on chess players, but I do know Mamedyarov. And so as of move 5, we are in a brand new game. So there are no games in the database where queen capture was played. Most of the time, the pawn captures. And then when the pawn captures, notice it's defended by the queen, so I can't just grab. But that does give me time to continue on. Now, in the Queen's Gambit, the reason why I have started playing with this variation where I capture, it's all because I want to play the variation where I fianchetto my light square bishop. Keeping my light square bishop on the main diagonal is crucial when you're waiting for black to capture, or if black captures, then your bishop can recapture, right? Your bishop is defending that pawn, long range. But by going for the exchange one that I like, it allows me to fianchetto and get my light square bishop on this really long diagonal known as the Catalan bishop. That's the version I prefer to play, but it's whatever the board gives you, you know? All right, so we're in a brand new game. So from here on out, we are in a brand new game. For move 5, okay. The only question here is, should I have captured with the bishop or should I have captured with the pawn? I feel like capturing with the pawn is a better move, but we did see how trapped my bishop got in there, and yeah, about a 1 to 1.5 point advantage for capturing with the bishop. So in this case, capturing with the bishop, getting the bishop outside of that pawn chain was really important. There's 2 attackers there. That immediately opens up a defender on this pawn, as well as, you know, not only the bishop, but as we saw, my bishop getting trapped. So, all right, turn that off. Yeah, this pawn structure in the center really felt really strong, and I was really happy with it. I'm going for my fianchetto. Yeah, right here, I think, was the first real... I wonder what the evaluation says. I wonder what... So white is up 1 point in material. That's a huge swing. Okay, so that's a bigger, even bigger swing than I thought it was. Not only is it losing, just a straight up losing a pawn, but that's a big swing. So capturing was the right move. My opponent... And then... Actually, any of the, yeah, either of these two seem to be about equal. Knight c4. Oh, I see. Just chasing the queen around some more. Eventually, D captures on C. And then knight to b6. So eventually rotating the knight all the way up and around. Okay. I did not see this move, but the idea is to try to put some pressure on. And if all you do is take away your opponent's light square bishop, in the Catalan, right, the Queen's game at the Catalan, the light square bishop turns out to be a really powerful piece. It's really useful to have around. So eliminating your opponent's light square bishop means I have no counterpart. So I'm powering up, I guess you could say, my bishop. Okay, I'll try to keep that in mind for future games, but it's not something that I would normally look for. Just a straight trade. Yeah, remaneuvering, and then I wonder if there's any other variation where I can defend. H3 or H4 are perfectly acceptable. So you could make a hole, right, and then just start walking away. That's an option. That always makes me nervous because now the queen has already infiltrated the position. My bishop is weakly defended. Notice it's only defended by my king, so I have to be really careful if anything else comes along. All right, let's say my opponent were to get something like this in. I'm in trouble. And you see now black is ahead by 3 points of material. So that's a 6-point swing if you don't block. So again, I felt okay here. My opponent retreating. Was there any tricks in the position here that I missed? So this is where I start looking to see if I missed anything on the board. Just a grab like normal. Yeah, this, where my opponent grabbed here. Okay, yeah, I played it well, so I did not miss anything in the position. I'm looking, when I say I'm missing anything, so my first instinct is to look at the top move, right, obviously, but also to look at what else is in the position. If one move is like, so I've got 4 lines turned on, but if one move is plus something and the rest of them are significantly different, that means that there was something in there, one move that changed the game. And I don't see it here, so there's not one move that stands out. Okay, so here's an example. By capturing the rook, I jump my evaluation from whatever it was, 3.5 to 4.9, whereas the others are down here in the 3, 2.6, 1.9. So the rest of these they're still okay, but this one is so much better that you could even go for this. Both their rooks are under attack. Both rooks are under attack. And yeah, your rook is also under attack, but that's a possibility. But you could see the difference. That's a 2-point swing of material difference. Capturing the rook versus any of the others. So that's kind of what I'm glancing at. Is there something I missed? In this case, grabbing was totally safe, and these other lines are significantly worse. Now, if all these lines were identical evaluation, then okay, that's fine, right? So in this case, my opponent should have captured back with the rook first. And yeah, see here, so here's something, if for some reason I didn't capture back, let's say I tried to get fancy and I tried to do something, look at these lines are way worse than this line. So this is the only line that really makes sense. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're evaluating your position. Don't just click the evaluation and go, oh, see, I was winning this whole game. Hey, I'm a great chess player. look for the other things. And the engine is not the end-all be-all, right? It just happens to be one way that I can evaluate myself all alone, right? There's nobody here. I don't have a coach or anything to teach me these things. I'm just guessing. So I'm grabbing back. My opponent grabbed back. So I had a couple of options here. I could have brought the queen into the game this way. My only fear was if I brought the queen into the game this way, did my opponent have some kind of ugly check that leaves my queen undefended at the end of the day? So I didn't want to go that route. I could have come up here. Again, I'm threatening both. And I would have left one of these, like, if I had my, like, words, Joe, use them. Let me get a sip of my little cola here. Slow my brain down for a second. If I had gone with this pattern and my opponent had done something differently, I would have probably gone for this outside pawn. Two reasons. Number one, my rook is already defending my outside passed pawn in that case, and so I can use that to help usher it down the board. But the other thing is it gives me one more layer between an undefended queen and my opponent snatching it somehow. Okay, so here's another question. How ugly was this queen defensive? No, not ugly at all. So I was worried that putting my queen here in front of my king was going to open me up to something, but nope. I feel pretty good that I saw it. So here's an example, right? All of these lines are about equal. There's 1 point of material between all of them. In fact, the top three are within half a point of material. So any of these three would have been sufficient, equal, right? They're equally as good according to the engine. Just so happened that I picked the top move. Proud of myself for that one. But the reason why we picked that is important. Why did we pick that particular square? Because we evaluated where my opponent's threats could be, right? Specifically this one, and what that means, right, with the knight coming in board. So it just so happens that my queen can get there, my queen is defended. That's a good square. So that's the pattern we took. So our process of evaluating was good. So that's what we want to verify, is that our process was correct. Because if the process is correct, then I can get back to the same state every time. But if my process is wrong, then it doesn't matter that I got the right answer. That means, because the next time this comes up, there's no telling if I'm going to get the right answer because my process was wrong. Now here's the question. Yep, grabbing the pawn was safe. Grabbing the pawn was safe. Not stupendous, but it was safe, so grab the pawn. The question is, do we have time to grab the second pawn, or is that being too greedy? Survey says no. Yeah, so we go from a 7.3. If we grab this pawn, we go from a 7.3 to a 4.2. So that's a no bueno. So getting too greedy would have been a mistake. And so yeah, I feel pretty good that I didn't get too greedy and I looked for alternatives. Yeah, getting the rook onto the open file is good. Starting to push our pawns is good. Rook to h4. So I glanced at this, but I didn't like it. Mostly because my pawn is pinned. So sticking this rook up here on h4 is still technically an undefended rook. So I glanced at it, but I ignored it and moved on. The engine says that I would have been okay. Rook to h4 is fine. I didn't see any wonderful, exciting things that I could do at this point in time, except maybe bring the queen back and then stick the rook under. But that seems like a lot of work. So that's another thing that I feel good about evaluating, is that this was a pinned pawn and I didn't count on it being defended. Let's say if the rook was able to jump down there or something. Wow, the engine hates this. So I missed something huge. queen f5, then rook e6. Oh, going after my queen. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Let me just click through this because I did not see this. I don't see what this line is talking about. Let me go back, because I'm not seeing the threats here. I'm just not able to visualize it. So the threat is, yeah, those are my threats, but what is my opponent? If my opponent goes here, what is my opponent's threat? Just grab this backwards pawn. But we said that in the game, right? We said that over the board that was these two are weak pawns. So why is that such a huge shift? Aha. Okay. So this is kind of the real threat, is the queen infiltrating big time. And then with the knight here, that becomes a threat. Okay, so that's what I was missing, is this piece. The queen really getting involved into the game, able to pick off all kinds of things. Okay, so this is why I use the engine sometimes, because you can see the dangers. That's this little tool up here in the corner, show the threats, because now I see the threat. I didn't see what the threat was, but letting the queen penetrate like that could be kind of scary. Okay, so let's back up to the game at hand. My opponent offered the queen trade. I immediately took the queen trade, and you can see here, look at this. If I don't take the queen trade, if I try to keep the queen, if I try to any other line, that the best is the queen trade. Anything else loses significantly. One of them is even a forced checkmate down here. Immediately lose the game. So, but queen trade, I'm up material, so I'm trading down to a favorable endgame. I have a massive pawn chain here in the center of the board, and yeah, unfortunately my opponent is going to pick one off. Pushing this just means my opponent takes it this way, but at least then I could get defended here. But my opponent's still down a whole rook though. Yeah, so either way, this is still favorable for me. I would not have put the evaluation this strong. I can't believe the engine is saying that I'm 7 points 7 points up. Like, that's a crazy evaluation. Especially considering 10 points up is where the engines assume, like when the engines are competing against each other, if one of them has a 10-point advantage, the other one just immediately resigns. So I really think my opponent should have grabbed here, because that comes with check. But this is what I was going to do. And then now I've got two attackers. They've only got one defender, so they have to move out of the way with check again. Yeah, and then either they save the rook or they trade. And if they trade, trade is a win for me. I'm happy for a trade. I don't know. I don't know. All right, let's go back. So this is what I do after a game. This is why a 10-minute game can take 30 minutes. Oh gosh, or 45 minutes. I'm sorry, everyone. I didn't realize this was so long. I apologize. So we'll speed on through this then. We're coming to the end game here. Yeah, I just let my opponent take that pawn. I didn't. That's fine. Surprised, honestly, my opponent didn't push here to lock this pawn in place where it's immediately a target. If I move the rook out of the way, then they can go back. But if I don't get a rook under there, then they've got an option to grab here. If I make a mistake, like bring the wrong rook over, they've got this guy locked up. But oh well, this just gave me a chance to get into a better endgame position. Got my rook lift in. Yeah, I really wanted to double up here, and I should have doubled up first. Yeah, bringing the king up here defends this pawn. Wow. Yep. Here's the mistake. We saw it as soon as we did it. We saw it, but we were in. I don't want to say time trouble, but I was in the moving quickly because I hate being low on time. And yeah, I didn't look. My guys are on the same color squares. We are in knight fork distance. There is a knight nearby. That's how I get nailed. I get crushed by knight forks. I just get crushed by them constantly. If you're playing a game against me, keep your knights on the board because I get crushed by knight forks. Yeah, my +7 goes down to -3. That's a 10-point swing for doing something like that. And then notice my opponent could have saved the knight. Right? It's defended by the thing. They could have saved the knight, and he chose not to. And that allowed me to get back into the game. Yeah. So I think my opponent misplayed there. They could have saved that knight and just been up a whole piece. But in this case, we are equal in material. I'm up a pawn. Yeah, bringing the king up, really locking that guy in place, so that way, because if the pawn makes it to the second row, then this rook, if somehow he manages to get it around, right? Let's say he gets his king into the game, it'd be kind of tough. Well, I make it easier for my next move, so he'd have to come up here. Well, it'd be a journey, but he'd have to get his something along those lines and defend this pawn, and then get the pawn down here. Then he could get over, down, and around. I mean, it's a journey. I mean, this is not an easy, but it's a possibility. Anyway, moving on. Notice if he captures, I'm just grabbing here. Yeah, my endgame skills are not great. Ooh. I could trade my rook for a queen. I was trying to do the math in my head as fast as I could of calculating out how to get this guy in, but the way I did it with rook to e7. Oh, I drop a pawn. Oh, but that's a dangerous pawn to drop. An outside pawn on the opposite side of my king means, oof, danger, danger, danger. Because grabbing this and then ushering this pawn down, my king's not fast enough to get over there, so I would have to drop my rook back. Oof. Yeah, that would be tough. That would be tough. And then, yeah, unfortunately, my opponent. Yeah, see, I need to work on my endgames a little better. This is what I should have done, because this traps my opponent's king, and I can now force a rook trade because this comes with check, and I could force a rook trade. My opponent would have to drop back to defend, trade rooks, and then I'm too fast. But I missed that. I didn't do it soon enough. And then my opponent got his rook out of the way, so now the danger is mostly mitigated. I don't know why I didn't just come over here. Yeah, I'm not great on my endgames. I'm gonna have to work on my endgame technique, y'all. This was my opponent. This is a huge mistake, okay? When you're playing an endgame, See how I have connected, well, once I push this guy up here, I'm gonna have a chain of pawns. Connected passed pawns are incredibly dangerous. And keeping the rooks on the board is really the only thing that's gonna save my opponent. Blocking and taking the rooks off, game over. I mean, you saw how fast that went. As soon as my opponent, now there's, I mean, well, you can see here, it's a forced checkmate if I play my cards correctly. I now have connected passed pawns. You can even ignore this third one. Just ignore the third one completely. Connected passed pawns. That's just incredible. And see, this is why, right? This is why. Because your opponent can't get the lead one. The lead pawn is off limits. Your opponent can't capture it. The only thing they can do is capture the back pawn. But as soon as you capture the back pawn, the front one's too far away. And as soon as my opponent grabbed, that's a queen. And so that's where the game over. And then from here, it's just checkmating. So, all right. Thanks for sticking around. I can't believe this is such a long video. I recommend when you guys watch it, maybe I'll put that in the comments so you don't wait to get this far. Click on the speed up, right? Live games sometimes go a little slow because you're waiting on each other and there's some thinking time. So click the speed up button, you know, and just let it run at 1.25 or 1.5 speed. And so the video will be a lot faster for you. Anyway, thanks so much for sticking around. This was a lot of fun. I enjoyed these games. I'm going to see if I can get another one. I probably don't have a time to do another one today, but check back tomorrow. All right, guys. Bye.